record on this.
Got it.
Right.
All good.
Here
Put
we go.
put my makeup on this morning and everything. You record away.
It'd be a meeting if Bruce's cat wasn't on screen.
I know.
Oh, yes, Bruce. That makes me so happy, Bruce. Thank you.
Beautiful cat.
I love the cats. Hi,
Yes.
hi, Jane.
Okay, we are.
And don't worry, even if you come on screen, that doesn't mean I'm gonna call you out. I promise. I won't do that.
No, that might be a good one to motivate people to turn their screen on. Because if we don't see your face, we might call on you.
Maybe I don't want to scare people that come into my presentation. Like, Megan's the one that calls you out. Your screen's not on. I'm not going to that. Oh my goodness. All right. It's 9:07. We have a good chunk of people in here. So I'm gonna let Darcy, because she's running the show here today, start, and then I'll kick in.
All right. Well, welcome everybody that's here. We had 80 people sign up, so we expect there will be more. We're recording it also for people to be able to view afterwards. We are hopeful that this is the first installment of 2, because this topic is extremely important, and there has been a great response to, people that, even as busy as everybody is right now, a lot of people signing up and really wanting this. So I am so excited to be able to introduce you to Megan Olson. She is a supervisor at Didi Hirsch, and I have just grown to really, really appreciate her and her heart when it comes to, these types of things. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Darcy. And Darcy, if you want to kick in poll number 1, I want to get to know who all is in the room today with us.
All right.
So as I'm chatting, feel free to answer that. And number 2, entitled question, just ignore that.
Whoops.
Hey man, I don't care how many years we've been in a pandemic,
That's so funny.
None of us are experts. We're all working it out. Okay, so I want to start off. There was, in a lot of the emails for the presentation, there's a bio there, so you can see all the stuff and the things in the bio. But I wanted to share. First, I'm going to show you my tattoo and why it's meaningful to me. So this is my sea turtle. But what I'm going to talk about is the starfish that's on the shell. So there is for people who might not be familiar, there's a starfish parable, and it's not the same. There's one that's got more of a thank you. One of them that's got more of a religious connotation, and then one that's more of a parable. So basically, there's a kid that's on the beach, and a bunch of starfish have washed up onto the shore, onto the sand. And if starfish are left out there too long, they can die, if they're left out in the sun. And so the kid is picking them up, and he's throwing them back in the water, one by one. And there's, a lady jogging down the beach, and she stops and she sees him doing this. And she's like, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm picking them up and throwing them back in the water, where they might die." And she's like, "There are hundreds out here. Like, this is absolutely, what are you doing? This is not going to make a difference." And he picks one up and he throws it in, and he goes, "Well, made a difference to that one." So I live my life by what I would call starfish moments. And today what I'm hoping to encourage you all is to throw yourself back in the water. We do a lot of things for others to throw them back in the water to help save their lives. But this is my visual reminder that everything we do makes a difference for everybody. And don't forget yourself. Don't forget to throw yourself back in the water, because that sun will bake you out. And so compassion fatigue is real. We'll talk, a little more. I feel like I have so much to say and like not enough time to say it. but I'm gonna, do my best, and we'll see how much we get to. Oh, I guess the poll is on my screen for me to answer as well. So let me do that. And I guess you have to pick a choice on one of those. There you go. Okay. So well, if people are still answering the poll, I'll just say that Darcy and I exchanged a lot of emails and chats, and I'm, aware beyond, what I hear from my own team and clinic, the devastating client circumstances, all of the self-harm in all its form, the violence, the despair, death, losing clients, and the much larger toll that this is having on social service providers, especially in our new world existence. I've always been passionate about justice for clients and for service providers, and too often I believe there's an imbalance. And, I'm an avid advocate for ensuring that no one feels ignored, unsupported, excluded. I believe in harm reduction. I think it's key because compassion fatigue and our work is very complicated. Despite doing this for 20 years, and I didn't even include, I did AmeriCorps and I taught an intro to social welfare at Glendale Community College, which was super fun. And y'all, this presentation is helping me with my compassion fatigue because it's kind of lit a fire and given me something a little bit different to do too. So I thank you for this opportunity. A lot of things I'm going to share, basically, I don't have a book, to share all of my truths. And, if you learned something new today, it may already be in a book or an article out there somewhere. But if it's not and you write one, just make sure to give me my flowers. That's all I ask. I want to take, information and patterns that I observe and I read and I gather over time and deliver it in a digestible way that makes sense for our day-to-day lives. I've gotten some things from articles that colleagues have given me, and I try to share generally what I've learned and observed, but some of these things are just coming from collective experiences and therapeutic approaches, things that you don't necessarily read about. It's just with time that you discover patterns, you discover themes in conversations, or themes in what's coming up with your clients and with yourselves. So, I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt. I think a lot of times people expect people to prove things with data and whatnot. And I'm like, I've been doing this too long, and I trust in what I've learned and what I've seen, and hopefully it'll resonate with some of you. And no matter where you are, enthusiastic, motivated, stagnant, frustrated, apathetic, etc., I hope that today's conversation creates some kind of movement in your life. Movement isn't always pleasant, but it's helpful, it's good. I would want to share my concerns about compassion fatigue, gather yours, and provide some insights on how we get behaviorally stuck. Besides intellectually knowing, we can know lots of things, but we're doing things that aren't working or good for us. So maybe we'll scratch the surface on some activities or skills or practices that can increase your personal insights, shift your perspective, and hopefully, you can make more adaptive decisions, that you're feeling more in control of your life in this chaotic world of social services. For the poll, how do we see the results? Because I am curious who all is here today.
If I end the poll, there we go. Do you see it?
I don't, but you feel free to
Okay,
share.
well, let me share the result.
Oh, yes, I do see it.
There we go.
Okay, so mostly direct clinical services, some supervisors. Awesome. Administrative, research eval, QI, leadership, volunteer. Awesome. And a lot of you really like choice number one. Interesting. All right. Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's relatively well-rounded, but yeah, most people are, doing direct service or administrative. One thing I want to consider is all of the assessments that we give our clients. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard the concept or the rubric of ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. And, they're basically rating, prioritizing and trying, to tackle, like if someone has X number of adverse childhood experiences, trying to do preventative care. And I feel like how do we apply that to ourselves and assessing ourselves for compassion fatigue, assessing our own ACEs? How does that apply to us? How do we further acknowledge and address the increased impact, not only in the general population, but also if we're looking at, equity, diversity, and inclusion, the increased impact on Black, Indigenous persons of color as social service providers. And I'll share a little bit more on that in a moment. Can you put poll number 2, Darcy?
Yes.
Thank
There
you so
it
much.
is.
I'm proud to finally say yes to that, but it took a long time. So be honest. And we'll give that a few minutes. So I think, in general, what are we doing to evaluate ourselves? I'm going to only have that poll up just for a short time. It's a quick one. So let's see the results, because I want to go on to number 3 in a second.
Okay, so I'm gonna share those results.
Okay. I'm happy to see 45 on the yeses. We got 37 people in here, so almost half and half, but good to know. So if you could put poll number 3 up, you guys don't have to answer it right away. I'm going to talk a little bit more about different versions of what you might see as compassion fatigue. But compassion fatigue would be more of a general term describing overall experience of emotional and physical fatigue that professionals experience due to chronic use of empathy when treating clients who are suffering in some way. Clients, patients, participants, we all have a different name, but you know what I'm talking about. Vicarious trauma is a term that was coined back in the 90s as part of a model to explain a therapist's reaction to a client's traumatic material. So vicarious trauma refers to the cumulative effect of working with traumatized clients involving changes in a professional's feelings, cognitive schemas, worldview, memories, your own self-efficacy, and your sense of safety. Then you have secondary traumatic stress. So that's a set of symptoms that parallel those of PTSD, acute stress disorder, and burnout, which, a depletion or an exhaustion of a person's mental or physical resources. And that can be from prolonged, but maybe unsuccessful striving towards unrealistic expectations, internally or externally derived. It's a term, again, that's been used since the 80s, more of like physical and emotional exhaustion that we can experience if we have low job satisfaction and we feel powerless or overwhelmed at work. So, all of these things, I'm saying compassion fatigue, but I'm thinking about a lot of these things collectively, and they affect a large swath of service providers, first responders, nurses, physicians, mental health professionals. But I don't think it's just our industry. I think this is across industries. How could you not be affected by everything we've just been through in the last 3 years? And there was a lot of this data I've gotten from various professionals at Didi Hirsch who have also gathered it from other articles and things. And I'll do my best to share what I can to back up what I'm saying. But the message to me is more important today. The rest I'll share later, and hopefully something resonates. But they basically call, compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma as like the secondhand smoke of the mental health world. And I'm like, that's an interesting way to put it, but it's a good visual. We talk a lot across agencies about diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, and acknowledgement of these symptoms and how they translate for BIPOC communities is mandatory. There's, research that a staff of mine provided when they did the LMFT conference in 2022 at USC, and discussing that for the BIPOC community, increased vulnerability personally and professionally to racism, racial trauma, increased vicarious trauma, and burnout due to being underrepresented in the workplace, experiencing disproportionate burden and responsibilities, and feeling an elevated sense of responsibility for communities, maybe even over-identifying, or the opposite experience of seeing, differences in socioeconomic status and racial identity and having survivor's guilt to some extent. So it's not just vicarious trauma, there's also vicarious racism of being in the same systemic society as BIPOC clients, having secondhand exposure to racial discrimination can cause a stress response in other members of that shared racial or ethnic group. So it's something to keep, deeply in mind of how important it is to care for ourselves in all communities, but specifically this, I want especially supervisors, and I'll talk more later, and agencies and people are in places of administration to acknowledge how key these changes are in order to keep our systems functioning and those that are most affected. Can I see the results of that last poll?
Yes. And there.
Okay. Before I go on, does anyone want to share what they think about these results? Do you have any responses or reactions to these results? Is anyone surprised by it? You want me to chat at you today? All right, I'll chat at you. It's early. Have you had your coffee? Because I know I have. It's all good. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but I am curious, and you can put your thoughts in the chat as well. You don't need to speak up, but I would be curious if anyone feels any surprises to those results. Don't worry, there's only 2 more polls. So let's put up the 4th one, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the 4th one. So, while describing these domains, there's physical, from all of the things, what do the symptoms look like? How do they hit us? And which domains do they hit us? So for physical, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but if where do you first notice distress physically? It could be insomnia, headaches, stomach pain, appetite issues, muscle soreness, substance use or abuse. For the mental and emotional, loss of pleasure, depression, anxiety, irritability, concentration. A lot of these are crossover. Workaholism, persistent intrusive thoughts. For relational, it might be work, like avoidance of discussing certain material with clients, countertransference, social isolation, withdrawal, maybe increased arguments with friends or significant others, decreased interest in activities, maybe always being the giver and failing to ask for help. I'm sure that's a lot of us in this room. And even sexual dysfunction is one of the bigger predictors of burnout. Spiritual and existential symptoms like loss of faith, loss of belief in a just world, excessive doubt, maybe inability to find meaning in a work or personal life, frequent doubt of the motives of others. And then for cognitive symptoms could be feeling detached or numb, emotionally disconnected. Again, anhedonia, like that loss of interest in activities you used to enjoy. And just like the emotional, maybe some increased anxiety or anger, or irritability or sadness, and difficulty making decisions. Let's see the results of this one, because this is the one of where do you notice it first?
There we go.
Interesting. Okay. That's interesting. So mostly emotional, with physical right behind, then cognitive, then spiritual.
I really expected that the cognitive would be much.
Me too. Me too. As someone with ADHD, my cognitive is on fire when I have compassion fatigue and I'm distressed. I'm big on, reducing stigma. I have a diagnosis of major depressive disorder along with the ADHD. And, it's been an interesting combo throughout my career. And, it's interesting that some things that can keep you sort of alive and functioning are also the things that can take you down if it's not in moderation. So, I often tell my team that a lot of times it's my commitment to them that gets me out of bed in the morning, and my commitment to, I used to have, a caseload of clients, but now I have a team supporting all of those clients. And, it is what gets me going, but then it also sometimes that desire to make sure everybody's cared for is where I sacrifice my own personal needs. And no one's asking me to do that per se. It's just, it's I have to help, I have to do this. So the idea is not to throw out, not to throw out what it is that keeps you motivated and drives you to serve people, but to find a balance somewhere. Let's go ahead and throw up poll number 5, because I would be curious about that. And then, while you guys are answering that, I'm going to share some examples of how I've seen compassion fatigue show up, or increased chances of it. So, at Didi Hirsch alone, I've been here 7 years, and I have had probably 6 or 7 people go out on leave of absence for a variety of reasons. And it doesn't have to be just stress leave. It can be accidents, it can be other illnesses, and stress leave, and there's a variety of reasons. But I think my team knows I get nervous about that, and I want to do anything I can as a supervisor. It's kind of like clients and hospitalization. We're glad it exists, but it is a last resort, and it's extremely humbling if you end up there, so we're trying to do what we can to prevent those things, having it get to that point. But I do see, increased calling out, maybe reduced breaks, like reduced bathroom breaks, eating, not getting up from the desk at all, substance or alcohol use, and maybe poor boundaries with clients, and not just like poor boundaries in the way you might be thinking, but also drawing the line. Maybe people are drawing the line less to feel better about the situation, like they're taking risks to help a client situation because they're feeling helpless. But that can put you in a really tough professional situation if you're acting on that desperation and that overwhelm. It really, I do think it's the emotional and the cognitive that start to get messed with when we get in that place. I think that also people double book themselves. I don't know how many of y'all have experienced that, where you're like, oh God, and messed up your calendar. So a lot of compassion fatigue I've seen sort of show up in that way. Let's see the poll results on this of where people are most concerned. Okay, it's mostly an even split. Physical, cognitive, emotional. Okay. Thank you guys for answering those. I figured it was the fastest way in the hour that we have in order to get some information and not be like Bueller. You want to answer?
Bueller.
Yeah, right. Let's talk a little more about just some research things that I gathered, and I'm sorry if it's rattling off because I want to get to some of the more skills and such, but I just need to say this, and I told Darcy this, like, my goal is not, to be irreverent to, and, our agencies that we all work for, volunteer for, participate in. But at the end of the day, what we're providing is a service, and it's a business, and the business needs to continue. The business needs to function, and there are demands on us that the business will not hold back on, because they need to keep going. And I have seen it over and over that, in previous, businesses and nonprofits that I've worked for, that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I thought I was liked, no matter what I did, that at the end of the day, there were choices made that, maybe weren't in my best interest. And also I had to look at how was I participating in that. So the first agency I worked for, I was there for 8 years, and I probably should have left after 2. I was miserable, and the clients were what kept me there and kept me going and going and going. I wouldn't do anything different because I learned a lot about myself and what I'm willing to sacrifice in order to meet other people's needs. But I don't ever want to learn that lesson again. And I want to help other people learn that lesson a lot faster. If you're, constantly overwhelmed and stressed and depressed, you need to think about that and assess yourselves. And we'll talk a little bit more later. But at the end of the day, you have seen people come and go in your jobs. And guess what? The world kept turning, right? I'm just saying, like, we have to have a bit of ego in order to be in this industry and think that we can help people and move them through their lives, but not so much ego that we think that that these industries will not continue without us, and making decisions to protect yourself, because at the end of the day, like, it's your life. You're left with yourself at the end of the day. So I just have to stop and say that for a minute. Doesn't mean I don't love my agency and I don't respect my agency. And I never went rogue or did anything like that. I've been written up for lots of other things, like not being able to do anything on time. So I know what that feels like. But guess what? I'm still a supervisor. So even though I have fallen on my face and I've had all, kinds of stumbles across my journey, it doesn't mean you taking care of yourself. Oh, dear Jesus, my computer wants to reboot. We're going to postpone that, luckily, for 9 hours. All right. So anyways, I'm going to stop. That's the universe's way of saying move on, Megan. All right. So in some of the research that I looked at and that other people had gathered, obviously social service providers are at risk of developing secondary traumatic stress from working with traumatized client populations. You add to a pandemic to this, and we've got increased demand for mental health services, which part of me loves. It's like, oh, y'all are finally getting it, that mental health is a thing, and that we all go through it, and that personally, I think everyone should have a therapist assigned to them at birth. That's just me. But like, I'm just so grateful that appears to be less stigma and people were sort of forced to move forward and acknowledge mental health, and hopefully be less judgy of people that are going through things. We're seeing more referrals, less no-shows, sometimes longer wait lists and higher workloads. We are seeing increased violence against Black, Indigenous, people of color and in non-white communities, increased housing crises, decreased and I guess challenges in access to services. So now, the hot thing with it, I think a lot of you are seeing, is the big notice about Medi-Cal. Everybody quick, recertify your Medi-Cal. They're going to drop you. It's like there's a swath of recertifications coming through now for Section 8, for Medi-Cal, for CalWorks, which is the program that I'm in now, where I will literally see the clients have submitted all their paperwork, they've done all the things, and then they still get dropped because these systems are so large and archaic. And honestly, I'd rather go to the DMV and Social Security office on the same day than go to the DPSS building and deal with all of that. And God bless the people that work in those systems. This is not about an individual. This is about, these systems are not always working in the favor of our clients, and we're having to hustle in order to help them protect their services, which adds increased pressure and overwhelm onto us. So the consequences, secondary trauma can threaten your health, the quality of the services the client might receive. And I think it can increase the financial burdens to nonprofit agencies because of burnout and employee turnover, which I've seen firsthand. There's other findings that say that the results, that the supervisory relationship, salary, caseload size, and personal anxiety are some of the most salient factors that can impact the development of secondary trauma. And I really focused on supervisory relationship, not only for the supervisors in the room, but for all of you to advocate to be in a situation. And if your supervisor can't offer the type of supervision, that's needed to improve or reduce the chances of you having vicarious trauma and burnout, then that's on your hands at that point of what decision do you want to make, because I've had that too, where I've said, I need this. And they said, nope, I can't do that for you. And I was like, wow, all right. And I had to really think about, what am I going to do with this information and how am I going to protect myself? So I'll come back to that more a little bit later, but supervisor empathy, unconditional positive regard, willingness to be known and be perceived by the supervisee was found to significantly lower secondary traumatic symptoms and compassion fatigue. So it suggests that the clinical supervisor who can provide a genuine, open, understanding, and accepting environment for the supervisee can become a protective factor and decrease that chance of burnout and all of those things. You know, there are different solutions. Some of them are long-term and feel a little out of our hands, and others, you know, are personal, but it doesn't mean that we stop fighting for the long-term. But I've always kind of made a joke that I feel like the female Robin Hood, you know, I'm trying to kind of work within the system in order to, you know, get everyone's needs met while still trying to slowly chip away at it and change it. That's just my preferred method. But, you know, at an organizational level, administrators, policymakers, you know, obviously higher salaries would help, encouraging reasonable client caseloads, ensuring that, you know, social workers have access to skilled clinical supervisors. EAP, don't give up on EAP, call it, use it, use all your benefits that are available to you. You know, and same on that personal level is, you know, increasing self-care, you know, to reduce your daily anxiety, to protect yourself. And, you know, again, additional things that, you know, my colleagues have provided me data on for BIPOC communities is a work-life balance that's impacted. You know, is there downtime management? Are there boundaries and limits in scheduling? You know, is there self-healing, you know, being in therapy in whatever form you can, even if it's a free support group in the community, attending to your spirit and your soul and enhancing your other protective factors, meditation, yoga and movement, prayer in church, family, friends, peers, supervisors, having mentors that you respect and you can relate to. If you don't have it where you're working, get it somewhere else, even at the same time. It can really influence and uplift you. And there's, you know, the concept of vicarious resilience, you know, being around people and expressing yourself, your pain, your joy, your hope, overcoming adversity from witnessing and, you know, participating in, you know, other survivors' recovery process. So there's so much to say. So here's my 20, 30, 40 cents. So I jokingly tell my staff that tears and anger are my favorite. And I know that might sound a little sadistic to y'all, but what I mean by it, you know, is I'll come to it in a second of why tears and anger are my favorite, but basically know thyself. I was talking earlier about how do we assess ourselves, like we would assess our clients. And just as I say to clients, like, we're not trying to get rid of our responses to things, at least not right away. I think that's an unrealistic goal. What we're trying to do is reduce the frequency that our you know, emotional or physical or cognitive responses happen. We're trying to decrease the intensity of it and the duration of it. How long is it lasting? So the only way to do that is to know thyself, is to self-assess. You know, I want to show you something, a couple things that I've discovered over time. This was me being nosy, and I found this on a copy machine. Oh, disabled participant screen sharing. Oh no, I can't screen share.
What?
Oh, maybe
Hold
I'm not a co-host anymore.
on with that. You're not. You are now.
Give me all the power. Okay.
Woo.
It's all right. We're doing well on the fly here. So like I said, I was being nosy and I found this on a copy machine and it looks really simple, right? And you know, this has been one of the best tools I've used in therapy with clients and I've thought about for myself, as basic as it might be. And the patterns that I learned from using this over time is that the discussed column runs the show. So if you are experiencing any of these things, you, your clients, anybody is experiencing any of these things, these are the worst sensations that human beings experience. And I would even add the unknown down to the bottom of that. The unknown, I think, is the worst human sensation, and we have to know, and so knowing we can't hang on to this for very long, usually for just a very split second, and we immediately get bounced over into typically the mad column, the fight, the scared column, the flight. Of course, there's sadness, surprise, and happy, but the biggest themes I saw were that the mad and the scared were on top of something else. There's always something underneath there. And so I encourage you, when you are, doing some self-exploration, and I'll provide some other tools in a minute, when you're doing the self-exploration, write down, in CBT, they have a thought record. In dialectical behavioral therapy, they have a chain analysis. Whatever it is that you're analyzing, what's happening? How are you feeling? How's your body feeling? What are your thoughts going through your mind? What are all the emotions coming up for you? Describe it in as much detail as possible. And when you're done with that, ask yourself what's under there, because what's under there is in this column. And this is what's running the show, and what's something that's worth paying attention to. So give me 1 second. My notes went away. So why tears and anger are my favorite is because they typically lead to a release, and they lead to self-preservation and action behaviors like the fight, versus flight or freeze. Typically when there's anxiety, or there's people are just frozen to inaction, that's where you have to do more assessing in order to figure out what's going on and wake it up a little bit. So the downward arrow activity, some of you may have seen this before. I'll share it later if there's an email to participants, but you can easily Google it. But a lot of people are familiar with this downward arrow activity, where essentially I did it on myself last night. So I was nervous about today. Who isn't giving a presentation to a bunch of people, right? So I felt overwhelmed, I felt anxious. And so I said, okay, I'm going to downward arrow myself. Let me practice what I preach, right? So I was like, what am I nervous about? And I wrote all the things I was nervous, that might happen. And then you ask yourself, okay, and if that did happen, then what? And okay, it might be a bomb, it might be this and that, X, Y, and Z might happen. And then entertaining, if it did happen, then what after that? And what after that? And what after that? And keep going. And what I can tell you is, I've been doing this activity recently with a few staff. It's kind of like this. We're therapists, but we're like this. And until you kind of step away, it's like, oh, it's my hand. Like it's too close. You were too close to your own stuff. And so unless you are physically writing it out, or you are talking to someone else beside you, doing something externally from yourself, it is very difficult to learn about yourself, to know what's really going on. And so when I would do this downward exercise with people, the thing I found inevitably for anyone I did with this, including psychologists, who do testing all day long, is that they would hit a point where they would start to go, it could happen, but it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. I would do this or I would do that. You start to excuse your way out of it. That it's not, no, and da da da. And I go, that's your intellectual mind coming in. Your emotion mind has hit the basement. It has beat you all the way down to the floor, and you need to figure out it's in charge. You can reason your way all day long, but your emotion mind is running the show, and you have to get to know it and make friends with it, because you can't just get rid of and push it away. It will find its way out in those physical symptoms you are afraid of, in the cognitive symptoms, in the emotional symptoms getting even worse. So even though it's difficult, it is essential that you are analyzing yourself in some way. The other thing that I want to encourage you with that downward arrow activity or whatever it is you're doing, the other theme that I've learned is that, people would go, okay, this might happen, I might get fired, and then I might become, I'm skipping steps, but people eventually get to, I'll lose my job, I'll become homeless, I'll get ill, and death seems to be where everybody eventually ends up if you push it far enough. And that can be literal death or you're just gone, you're disappeared, you went into a black hole. But guess what? That's not the end. And that is something that I realized is that type of death, though that might sound scary, doesn't seem to be people's worst fears. It's what happens after you die. Think about that. What happens after you're gone? What are you worried about? And that is where the emotions, they're hitting the basement, the fear, even me giving this presentation today, it brings back all of the other times I've ever felt this way, and it brings it into the room. And it isn't just me leaving this planet I'm afraid of, it's who will suffer that I leave behind, who will also be sad, who might also become ill or die or whatever. Like, being empaths and being in the helping field, it's even more expanded. And then if you're coming from a non-white community where you're seeing disproportionate impact of your communities, then it's expanded even beyond that. And so this is extremely important to remember, that when you're overwhelmed and when you're having fatigue, you would not live in a house where everything you owned was dumped in the center of the room, right? So why would you, when you're reacting strongly to something, you're taking everything you've ever been through and you're dumping it in the middle of the room, and you're existing that way. And assessing yourself and evaluating yourself is a way to little by little take things and put them on the shelf, put them in the drawer, separate them out, so that it is not all on top of you and all over you. It's not fair to do that to yourself, but it's not something, you can't blame yourself for it happening. That's an automatic human emotional response that goes on. So I really encourage you to use that downward arrow activity. There's another thing that I learned. I don't know if any of you have heard of landmark education, and you may have a variety of opinions about it. I have a variety of opinions about it, but I did participate in it. And one of the things that I took away from it was they talked about something called your winning formula. So as adults, that's why I love working with adults, actually. It's like my favorite, is, looking at the patterns that got us here and why we respond the way we do. So again, knowing thyself, knowing why you do what you do, you have to learn what's your winning formula. So I'm going to give you a crash course in figuring out your winning formula, and you can take your own notes and assess further as you like. But they called it kind of like, it's like your X plus Y plus Z equals your winning formula. So around ages, before maybe you're 0 to 3, you're not cognitively developed enough, you have concerns, but it's somewhere around the ages 3 to 5, something happens. You have a moment that happens, and it can be as severe as abuse and as simple as being teased in school. But whatever it is, something happens where you realize life isn't as safe as I thought it was. That didn't feel good, and I want to protect myself from feeling that way ever again. So in order to protect myself, I'm going to do X in order to protect myself. And I think X could be, I'm going to be invisible or quiet or not seen so that doesn't happen to me, or I'm going to be funny so that maybe people will, like me and laugh so that it doesn't happen. I'm going to be real, real helpful, or, whatnot. So there's different things that you choose on that your identity starts to form, basically. Your winning formula, your winning identity. But this is all self-preservation to protect yourself. So 3 to 5, something happens. Then around 8, 9, or 10, something else significant happens. We layer on another layer of how we're going to protect ourselves so we don't have to feel that way again. And then maybe 12, 13, 14, same thing, that. So by the time you're 18, it's not like with Santa and the Tooth Fairy that you leave that behind. This comes with you into adulthood and cruises on until the day we die, unless we pick it apart and we understand. And there's nothing wrong with it. Thank you, winning formula. Thank you, coping skills. They got you here. They got you this far. But if you're hitting your head against the wall because you keep, oh, I have to be super helpful, or something bad will happen to me. I have to be perfect, or something bad will happen to me. I have to be quiet. I can't speak up, or something bad might happen. That might seem really basic to you, but you made these decisions a long time ago. So you have to think about it from the mind of a child who's not fully cognitively developed, trying to protect themselves. But it's still there because it's what kept you safe all this time, right? So it is literally terrifying to stop doing that, to stop behaving that way. And that is where assessing what is your winning formula? What are some of the identities you've taken on? Is there anything that you could consider shifting, that you could reduce a little bit? Test the water. I'm not saying throw it out because that is terrifying, but like saying no once in a while. Oh, saying no, that's a hard one for us, but give it a shot. I have so many things. So like one of the things that I do, another thing that can be helpful is visible mantras. So one of the questions, like I have a dry erase board. Right now I'm up in Washington State visiting the fam, so I don't have all my goodies to show you, but at home I have a dry erase board and I have some quotes on it. And one of them is, who does this belong to? So if you start feeling a type of way, even more intense than usual, especially after working with a client, step back for a second in how you're feeling and ask, who does this belong to? Because chances are it doesn't belong to you. You are empaths in this industry. I do not care what your role is. You all are helping each other to keep this thing functioning and help people survive the most awful things that are out there, right? So, it's a beautiful thing, but you have to be able to decompress and separate and not make yourself go crazy when you feel like, oh my God, I'm so anxious. Why am I so anxious? Is something wrong with me? It's like, no, you just had a conversation or a session with someone who is also like this, and you have taken it on as your own. And you've also brought every other time you've ever felt that way in your life into the room. Stop. Stop for a second. There's an acronym, HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. HALT. Stop and fix one of those because if any of those are going on, you're also out of whack. Another thing on my dry erase board is, who am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? Like, ask yourself that question, and really think about it. And the other one that's a bit irreverent, but it also is meant to be you reality testing yourself, is, does it matter though? And I've shown my staff, they know, I hold up the quote board, it says, does it matter though? And again, don't be mad at me, agencies and supervisors or whatever, but I'm just saying, you miss a deadline. Like, of course it doesn't feel good to miss a deadline, to make an error or a mistake. None of it feels good. But are you willing to sacrifice your emotional, physical, cognitive, spiritual, relational health to meet all of the demands on your plate? I'm just saying. Like, there are times where I was overwhelmed. I was like, I can't do all of this. And I felt like I had to. I must submit this to DMH. It's due, this deadline, it's got to get in. And I had to test the water of all my winning formula, all of the things that I felt I had to do. I had to test the water to save myself. So I missed a deadline. Maybe I got a little hand slap, but even if I, the downward arrow, let's say it ended up to me getting fired. well, I'm not dead. You know, like I hate to be irreverent, but I love to be irreverent. Like I just need to smack some reminders into your minds that you are here to support, you are not here to save. And you have to take care of yourself. You have to put your mask on first before anybody else's. You know, have inspiration cards around you for you and your clients. Fill your social media with humor, human kindness, passions, interests, animals. I'm big on karaoke and coffee, amongst other things. I'm gonna stop for a second because I want to see what Laura has to say, and then I want to show you a very quick video before we wrap up, and I'll also stay after for questions. Laura?
Thanks so much, Megan. I just wanted to contribute. When you're irreverent, does it matter though? My version of that is from an episode of Schitt's Creek where Alexis and David are fighting, and she keeps telling him that nobody cares. And that's something that I say to myself, like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's fine. Nobody cares. Like, I'm upset about it, or I'm mad at myself, or my feathers are ruffled, but like, does anybody care about this? No, nobody cares. It's fine. So I just wanted to share that I can echo that. Does it matter though? Yeah. And I also wanted to say, for the faith leaders in the room, I really echoed with your here to support, not here to save. I always say God saves, not me. I don't save anybody. God saves people. And so that also helps me to feel it's humbling, and it's a good place to be in. And it's like, oh, right. Yeah. Salvation doesn't come from Laura East. Salvation comes from God. And so it's a good reminder of, you know, we're here to support, not here to save. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You know, empathy comes in a lot of forms, compassion versus pity. You know, have compassion, have empathy, give support. But at the end of the day, if you're here to do this work and you're here to do it in the long run, you will not be able to do it if you keep going the way you're going. It's just not going to happen, and there will be consequences. And then what were you put here for? God, the universe, whatever you believe in, you believe in having a purpose here. Like, sometimes you will get drop kicked by the universe if you're not paying attention. Like, sometimes that lesson is you know, and I can't say it enough. So I'm going to show just a quick 1 minute irreverent thing to you. If you have children with vulnerable ears, or you do not like cursing, I recommend you mute your computer now. So give me 1 second. Share sound. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. It's not the survey monkey. Ignore the survey monkey. Okay, let's see if you can hear this. Raise your hand.
They say hard work never killed anybody. But remember, what doesn't kill you is putting you under chronic stress medication. Work hard, play hard. Bad idea. Work less, play more. Much better idea. Don't stay at work 1 minute more than you have to. When the work is finished, switch off the laptop computer, switch off the phone, switch off the brain. Tell your boss to take their after hours emails and shove it up their ass. You have a life, so live it. And remember, all work and no play makes Jack impotent.
Oh, irreverence. And I got one more for you.
Don't beat yourself up over past mistakes. You are going to fuck up talking about your ex. Quite possibly in the most spectacular love will not seek you. If you keep scaring off everybody with your negative energy and your constant need to bring up your ex in conversation, when you have tomorrow's fuck-ups to look forward to, you are a fuck-up. And fucking up is part of your growth process. Embrace the process.
Sorry, some are going over each other, but I think it was like, you're going to fuck up in a most spectacular fashion. So, you know, just stop dwelling on the old and the new. And I apologize if anyone was offended by that, but irreverence is it is one of the things that in sarcasm and, you know, is what keeps me going. final thoughts. I know it's 10:01. This is a marathon. If we want to keep fighting for social justice for our clients and our communities, we must also fight for ourselves. We can be fallible and human. We can model trying and having trouble with self-care, and we can share these struggles with our clients and our colleagues to more honestly tackle coping strategies on the journey towards meeting personal goals. If you struggle, you can share that struggle, and then you can work with your client to go, hey, this might come up as a struggle for you. How can we preemptively fight that? So schedule your doctor's appointments, use your sick leave, take mental health days, use your full insurance, use the bathroom, eat something. Please put some snacks by your desk. Like, I had to leave you with that. I thank you guys so much. This was a lot of fun, and I talked a lot, so I hope it was good. And that's it.
Thank you so much.
It was
Megan.
excellent.
Does anybody have any questions? Any burning questions for Megan? We've got this on
I'm here. I can kick it another 30 minutes. I just had to get that all out in an hour.
Are there any questions? I think that was a lot of content to, really mull around and, spend some time thinking about those things. We also have this recorded, so you can look at it, at again and again and again. I'll send out the link.
And you'll have to help me save the comments, Darcy, because I can't keep them. Keep up, but thank you so much. Hi, Mark.
Hi. Mine is a question from a pastoral perspective.
Yes, please.
The call for wisdom in discernment is a big part of what we do. And I find that the greatest impediment is anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And that anxiety comes from having to network, not as a clinician, but for example, I may need to reach out to any one of you for people that come to us that you would consider clients, but we consider people in need.
Yes.
The overwhelming number of needy people, both in homelessness and those in need of supportive services, creates an element of wait time, downtime, that just it is just replete with overwhelming anxiety that can only be remedied by a response from within the network that says, oh, give us their names, give us their information, and we'll take it from here. But waiting, even while we've been on this call, on this Zoom, I got a call from someone that is in dire straits, has been given a 3-day eviction notice. Well, I am full of anxiety because it feels like failure.
Yes.
By not being able to take advantage of the coordinated entry system, 211, LA HOP, and everything else that I know. So what is your advice about that? Not necessarily as burnout or fatigue, but just anxiety.
Absolutely, because that anxiety can go down the road to the vicarious trauma, to secondary traumatic stress, to compassion fatigue. So it's good to pay attention to it. You have to believe in your purpose. What is your purpose here? And I think you know what it is, or you wouldn't be in a pastoral position. And you have to believe that you are doing everything you can within the purpose that you've been given, and that you are not responsible. One of my core beliefs, like in cognitive behavioral therapy, which CBT, I love it, research more and more. You can Google a lot of things, and maybe in the next, I hope there's a next training, but in the next one, I can do a little more psychoeducation around some of these tools that you can use for yourself and the people you're supporting in a tangible way. But it's meant to help you, learn your core beliefs and manage that anxiety while you are dealing with what feels impossible. We cannot remove that client's circumstance. We have to have what DBT would call radical acceptance. It doesn't mean radical agreement. It means radical acceptance of what is happening right here and now, while also wanting something different. What can I do with what I have right now? And managing your anxiety is that sometimes a core belief, one of my core beliefs is I am responsible, because I had family locked up at a young age. And so I made a decision at a young age that I was responsible for some things, which is nonsense, but that's the decision I made. I was too young, and all of us were too young, and we all made a lot of decisions that are running the freaking show right now. And so it's learning what are the decisions that you made and separating them from what is reality. You are not responsible for saving everybody. It is lovely that you are even trying. It is lovely that, yes, I'll send those links. I let the staff that I work with know, because they come in, especially out of grad school, thinking, I've got to use all the evidence-based practice and all the skills and all the tools, and I got to fix this. Or like yourself, I got to learn the coordinated entry system, and I got to know all the resources, and I got, and it's what we're forgetting is our humanity, that just looking someone in the eyes, giving them eye contact. I've had clients say, you're one of the first people to look me in the eye. And it's like, whoa, remembering that even though it may not seem like it, and even though people may not recognize it right in the moment, that you are making a difference by acknowledging them as a human being and even giving a damn and trying to help. That is enough. You are enough. And it's just reminding yourself, find that piece of paper, dry erase board, memes, GIFs, whatever, tape them all around you. Have visual reminders, because you will continue to be overwhelmed by this. We all are. Like I dealt with homeless veterans, and I don't mean dealt with in that way, but like I supported homeless veterans, that were dealing with extreme trauma, going down around Skid Row, doing community outreach. I have seen it. I have done it. And it is horrifying, and it leaves you in a state. That's not something we can get rid of. We can just like with the people we're serving, is how can I help you in this moment? How can I bring you a glass of water, a cup of tea? Can I treat you like a human being, and let you know that I care? That is enough. And that is all you can do. You are, wanting to be able to be more and do more is lovely, but it's not realistic. Like you can't possibly do all the things. And believe me, I've tried, but, just trying to showing the effort and being there for your fellow human is the most important thing. All the rest of it is gravy on top. Like that's how I feel about that. I don't know what you think, but
well, that was very, very helpful. I hope not just for me, but for everyone. I know that I traveled all the way to South Africa to become a faith-based mediator.
Beautiful.
And it was really funny. The one thing that we were given as a mantra was, it's not my problem to solve.
Nope.
It is a connective relational issue that we walk people through, provided we have the resources and the pathway clear to do that. And boy, just to know that we're in this together helps me.
Yeah, we're in it together. We're all colleagues. I mean, West Side Coalition, that's what it stands for, is everybody coming together and sharing resources and not holding tight onto what we have, which is why I'm like, okay, this might be in a book. It might be original content I'm sharing. I don't know. And just give me my flowers if it's an original idea and you write a book with it. But I'm going to share it regardless. Like it hurts me to no end to see people sacrificing themselves for others. And all of us have also had a situation, and this is no shade to our clients or the people we support, where we chase our tail running around doing something for them to only find out, oh, someone already helped them with this. Oh, they were already halfway down that road. Oh my God, that's how I've gotten in, in hot water and excuse my French, but screwed myself, because I spent all this energy of, I've got to get them this and the this and the this. And first of all, they didn't want it in the first place. Second of all, they already got it from someone else. they think you're going to give them something better. So they're not going to necessarily tell you. They're trying to get their needs met. And that's another survival tip I can give you is understand. You don't have to judge someone, but understand that the clients, if they cuss you out, if they don't show up, if they won't sign the paperwork, if they, if everything falls through that you worked so hard for, that's okay. I got a client this close to getting housed, and he's like, I'm not showing him my bank statements. And I was like, oh God, like we just went on this 6-month journey, of getting you right to the literal door of an apartment. And you're like, I'm not showing him my bank statements. And I was like, oh my God. And I just had to be satisfied with, I did that. I showed you what was possible. You can choose it or not choose it. You saw that someone cared about you. You saw what your options were. And that's it, but be curious, ask questions, and just actively listen. Eye contact, like giving someone just positive, warm regard, validating them. That means more than a lot of other things, even though they may not tell you that, show that, or, you may not see that right away. You just have to believe it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Anybody else have any thoughts on today? Any questions? Any current issues going on? I'm caffeinated, I'm hyped.
Well, thank you so much, Megan. This has been wonderful. And you've got a Survey Monkey link that I'm going to send out to everybody that attended, correct?
Once I can get it to work, yes.
No problem.
Apparently I chose something in the Survey Monkey that costs money, and I'm not going to do that. So I will fix that. I will give it to you. And I know there was a bunch in the chat, so I'm hoping, usually when I close a Zoom, there's a box that pops up that saves the chat. Also, maybe before we close this, I'll just select all in the chat. Oh yeah, I can select all. Copy and paste, baby. That is my jam. So I'll try to, if there were any questions or any resources that people wanted from today, I've got all of them now in this Word document. So I might not be able to provide it this moment. I didn't want to spend time trying to upload things into the chat. I just wanted to get into it. But keep your eyes open for an email from Darcy in the next couple days, and I'll make sure to get it all to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Definitely, you'll see it. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you all so much. I'm so glad.
It's been good seeing all of you guys, and let's do this again.
I would love to. Yeah, so when you do get the survey, let me know what you want to deep dive on or what other things you might want to talk about. That'll be important on what we do next.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yay.
All right, you guys, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Mwah. Thank you for being here today.
Darcy, did you want to stay on after everyone leaves, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'll hang out.
Absolutely.
I'll hang out. Bye, you guys. And you're welcome to give out my contact information. I don't mind if people, email me. I probably should have said that in the beginning, but you can do it in the email later. I'm more than happy, to provide my contact info. Email probably best.
I love that somebody was requesting those videos.
I mean,
so funny.
I get it. It's got swearing or whatever, but it's funny. It's like there's a balance of irreverence that helps to bring humor and sort of smack you with a little bit of reality. Like, hey guys, like, don't forget.
and it's not for everybody, but I love that somebody was like, hey, could you share that with me?
Can you send me that? Yeah. There are articles about swearing being a sign of intelligence.
Hey, you two, I'm sorry about staying on and intruding, but I just wanted to ask, Darcy, can I call you later about the renters moratorium?
Okay.
When we did that, there were some contact numbers that we were given, and I really do have that client that has been given a second 3-day notice, and they really need some intervention. So
absolutely, Mark, I've got you covered.
Do you guys
Okay.
utilize mental health advocacy services?
I,
MHAS?
you probably need to send me that because
there's-
I'm not
there's a-
familiar with that. I would, we utilize Betzetic for legal services.
Okay.
Um,
We have two legal representatives from mental health advocacy services that sometimes will support our clients at Didi Hirsch, and they've helped a lot with housing issues and financial like budgeting issues that people are
wonderful.
having. And they know a lot about the law about, with the pandemic, who can be kicked out, who can't be kicked out, like, that kind of stuff. So if you, I'll try to send, I don't know if can give it out. So they'll be like, why is everyone emailing me? But if you look up mental health advocacy services, MHAS, just Google it and deep dive on that a little bit. And Darcy, I'll try to connect you with someone. And I know Mark is in your ear, so you'll give him whatever, whatever I can.
Please, and I'm going to leave because I'm feeling like an interloper.
No, you're fine. I
Okay.
love sharing resources. I was going to be here till 10:30 anyway, if anyone wanted to chat. So
Enjoyed
you're fine.
seeing you guys. I really did.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm eating
Talk to you later,
snacks.
Darcy.
all right, thanks, Mark.
I'm practicing what I preach with the snacks.
All right, so if you can send me the link for that, and then also the mental health advocacy or any of those things, I can send it out in a follow-up email. That would be wonderful. Good.
I
reason.
will. I will.
Very good. Oh, I'm gonna stop
you wanna-
recording.